right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I want to first recognize Senator Ben Cardin, Natasha Murphy, Deputy of Advocacy for Black Girls Vote, Aries Prince, founder of the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee, and Armstead Jones, Election Director for the City of Baltimore. We are gathered here today to send an important message to our residents in Baltimore. We understand, and you have to know, that Baltimore, Maryland, and this country is at a critical crossroad. And the primary 2022 election is right around the corner and really has already begun with people already voting. This election will have tremendous consequences for our city, our state, and our country. And if you want to have things that we know we need, it is important to vote. If you want us to have the resources to fund our schools properly, vote. If you want us to have the resources to pave more roads, vote. If you want us to have a justice system that works on all levels to make our neighborhoods safe, vote. And after the last week, I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Basic values and decency are under attack in this country. And those who want to turn back the clock to a time when segregation was legal and women didn't have the right to choose what to do with their bodies, their own bodies, are counting on those of us who believe in fairness, equity, and just plain humanity for all to stay at home and not vote. Don't give them what they want. I am asking you, really, I am begging you to not make that a mistake again and vote, because we have clearly seen in the last week that elections have consequences. For those who want to see a crackdown, not just in Baltimore, but across this country on illegal guns, you have to vote. You want to see stronger, tougher gun laws here in Maryland, you have to vote. You want to codify a woman's right to choose what to do with her body and push against this irrational decision made last week, you have to vote. You have to turn out, and we have to turn out to vote in order to get ourselves on the right path. And as we move closer to Election Day on Tuesday, July 19th, here are a few crucial dates that I want everyone to remember. The deadline for voter registration is tomorrow, so register today. That means if you're not currently registered to vote, stop what you're doing, go and register. Early voting starts on July 7th and ends on July 14th. The polls will be open during early voting from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And if you can't come to the polls or prefer to vote by mail, contact the Baltimore City Board of Elections by July 12th to request a mail-in ballot. And you please be sure to put your ballot in the mail or at a drop box location that you can find across the city by 8 p.m. on July the 19th. And you can contact the Board of Elections, I'm sure Armstead will say this again, at 410-396-5550 or at boe.baltimorecity.gov. Again, that's boe.baltimorecity.gov. We are still in need of more election judges. If you're interested, please register as soon as possible to help to make sure we have a fair election. And last but not least, of course, Election Day is on July the 19th, so grab your friends, your loved ones, or as the immortal Elijah Cummings would say, Lottie, Dottie, and everybody, and take them to the polls. We are counting on everyone in Baltimore to show up and make your voice heard. And with that, I will say thank you and turn it over to our state Senator, our U.S. Senator Ben Cardin. Mr. Senator.
Thank you. Mayor Scott, first of all, thank you very much for bringing us together to underscore the importance of the people of our community registering and voting in this midterm elections. It's very interesting. Mayor Scott and I are not on the ballot. I have a 6-year term, which is nice that we don't have the mayoral elections in this cycle. But our ability to represent the people of Baltimore are very much on the ballot, as the mayor pointed out. Elections have consequences, and all 3 branches of government are on the ballot. What do I mean by that? Yes, you will be voting for legislators in this midterm elections. You'll be voting for a member of the United States Senate. You'll be voting for a member of the United States Congress. very important positions. You'll be voting on state legislators, very important positions. You'll also be voting on the governor of Maryland, very important position for Baltimore, to get a mayor that will work to help the people of Baltimore. But the judicial branch is also on the ballot. As we've seen what the previous administration was able to do in the appointments they made to the Supreme Court of the United States. Two recent rulings. One, taking away the constitutional right of a woman to make her own decision, and the other, taking away from local governments the ability to keep their communities safe with sensible gun safety legislation. It makes a difference who's in the executive branch. It makes a difference who's in the legislative branch as to who will be in our judicial branch. So these elections are critically important. So the message is simple. We want all eligible voters to register to vote. You only have until tomorrow if you haven't registered or to change your affiliation. Tomorrow is the deadline. Then we want all registered voters to vote, to come out and vote. So it's easy. You can vote by mail if you requested a mail-in ballot. There's early voting from July the 7th through the 14th, convenient locations where you can vote at your convenience or on Election Day. But vote. And then the third request, and that is be an informed voter. This is a long ballot. Know the offices that you're voting for and the people that you're voting for and what they stand for and the issues that you're concerned about. And there's a lot of objective information that's available. League of Women Voters always puts out a voter's guide. There's information that you can get on all of the offices that are up. We need you to do this. I am particularly thankful that we have a representative here from the young people. This is your future. You can make a difference in this election. We need you to be engaged in our political system. It's your future. So on behalf of all the people of our community, we're going to count on you to be a voter, an informed voter, and vote in the best interest of our future. And it's really a pleasure to be here with the mayor as he underscores the importance of Baltimoreans voting in this midterm election. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. As you said, it's so important that we show up and vote in every election. Our democracy only works when our residents come out and vote and to hold their elected officials accountable on the ballot and otherwise. Now we will hear from Natasha Murphy, Deputy Director of Advocacy for Black Girls Vote, Inc. Natasha?
Great, thank you, Mayor Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank the mayor, as well as Senator Cardin, as well as one of my peers in civic engagement, Eris. You are all champions of democracy, and as we prepare for the 2022 midterm elections, I want to implore everyone to engage civically. You know, as a representative of Black Girls Vote, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that is all about engaging, educating, and empowering Black women to use their vote as their voice and demand policy that is going to transform our community. And we recognize that voting is a critical pathway to ensuring that change is effectuated in our society. And so with tomorrow's voter registration deadline, I encourage every eligible voter out there, please register to vote. Be sure that you check your voter registration status. If you need to make any changes, do that ahead of tomorrow's deadline, because at the end of the day, policy is on the ballot, social justice is on the ballot, education is on the ballot, public safety, and the future of our democracy is on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha, and thank you to Black Girls Vote for all the great work that you all do each and every day to make sure that young and Black women and other women are represented, but also engaged in this process of elections. Now, we will hear from the most important person that we will hear from today. We will hear from Eris Prince, founder of the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee, and a fabulous young woman who will be taking the world by storm as she continues to grow in her leadership. Eris?
So first, I would like to start by saying thank you so much to Brandon Mayor Scott for having me here today. My name is Eris Prince. I'm the founder of the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee, which is a nonprofit and nonpartisan committee focused on teaching civic education in addition to helping young adults register to vote. We believe in being a nonpartisan committee to ensure that both sides are being heard. During the 2020 presidential election, I noticed that there was a big emphasis on voting. However, there was little discussion around why voting is important for young adults or the process to register to vote. I strive to meet the needs for civics education and voter participation in Baltimore City. In the last 2 years, we have been able to register over 200 youth voters. While these numbers are not big, the number of youth voters that we have been able to educate about the political process is important. Being able to branch the connection between young adults and their councilpersons by hosting conversations through social media with important leaders such as Mayor Scott, Councilman Costello, and Councilwoman Porter is one of our biggest goals to continue to have these conversations by reaching out to legislators and candidates from all political parties. The importance of voting now more than ever in the United States is significant. Voting is one of the biggest civic responsibilities that we have as citizens, as it determines who represents us on all levels of government. And this election year is crucial on both the local and federal level. In the state of Maryland, we are in a gubernatorial election year, which means we will be electing the next governor of Maryland. The governor-elect of Maryland will have the power to weigh in on state laws that can have a direct effect on us here in Baltimore City. Locally, the primary election on July 19th in Baltimore City will determine a number of significant positions, including the Republican and Democratic Central Committees, the state's attorney for Baltimore, and the sheriff. Local and state governments must be the driving forces behind change. Policies and change start from the ground up in your communities and neighborhoods. Young adults, we have the power to change the outcome of elections by casting our votes for the officials and representatives that we feel most effectively represent us and advocate us in local government. This is why our presence at the polls is vital. Young adults must stand up and use our voices at the polls. Check your voter registration status. Make sure you're doing your research to understand who represents you in City Council. Get involved with local organizations like the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee. Stay updated on election information through the Baltimore City Board of Elections resource page. We must engage in thoughtful conversations surrounding every aspect of our government. When in need of help, speak with your friends and family about anything that may concern or overwhelm you about the voting process. More than anything, don't be afraid to ask questions and do your research about the process and the candidates. We can be the change that we would like to see in the city. I urge you to not only get out and vote, but make sure you are registered to vote by tomorrow's deadline, June 28th. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Harrison. Well, I don't think there should be any questions after she just laid it all out for us. I will turn it over for questions.
Mayor Scott,
Yes.
actually this question, as much as I would like to hear from you and Senator Cardin, is actually for the other people that spoke.
Fine by me.
During your press conference, with the overturn of Roe versus Wade on Friday, could you express the urgency that comes with registering to vote or voting, in your opinion? And could you state your name?
Yes, so Natasha Murphy again with Black Girls Vote. The decision of the Supreme Court to overturn, the 50-year precedent of Roe versus Wade highlights the fact that elections at every level have consequences. And if anything, it really reveals the critical importance of ensuring that the electorate is electing individuals who represent the will and the voice of the people. Polling represents that the vast majority of Americans had no problem with Roe versus Wade as it stood and wanted to see the precedent, continue to be upheld. And so with the loss of these rights, I think it's going to spur voters across the country to participate in local and federal elections to ensure that their representatives really are capturing their will.
I definitely believe that with the Roe versus Wade case, it brings up a point that we have to be active in our local and federal elections to ensure that things like this are not a problem in the future. And I believe that we need our voice heard by voting for people who will represent us and voice our concerns.
And your name just one more time.
Of course, I'm Eris Prince with the Baltimore City Youth Voter Registration Committee.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd like to know if Armstead has any numbers of registration so far and any predictions on turnout.
Uh-oh, I'm staying.
Well, let me just say this as far as registration numbers. Numbers have not been enlarged that much through the process this year. There's been quite a few organizations doing voter registration drives and they continue to do that. Normally, the last day, we will get those forms in, and we'll be able to determine where we are. It's important that, you know, we do register and everybody takes that opportunity to vote. These young people put it out there for us today. They have said it all and done a very good job at doing it. I love to hear young people speak because after years in education, this is a product of what we have, and I'm proud of what I've heard from them today. As far as the election itself, we are looking for more election judges. We are still probably 800 to 1,000 off from what we need. It's been very difficult this time trying to recruit not only here in Baltimore City, but around the state, either with the pandemic still being out there, people are a little leery. Most of the judges that serve in Baltimore City were 60 and over retired people who would work. And we found that a lot of those persons are not coming to training to work. So I encourage the citizens of Baltimore to call the office at 410-396-5550 and let them know you would like to serve as an election judge. We still have election judge training going on right now, and it's important that if you want to serve, you need to call us right away because training will end very soon. Then we will make a determination if we need to take the training up to Election Day so that we can staff the polling places so the citizens can come and exercise their right to vote.
Thanks, sir.
Did you say registration was down? I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Don't really know until a lot of the forms are turned in. I have not seen a large number of people coming in requesting forms to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Well, hold on, Mackenzie, she was,
This is off topic, so if it's about, go ahead.
Oh, no,
I just wanted, go ahead.
This question's more for Senator Carter and President Scott. I mean, are there any plans to preserve and safeguard the laws that currently exist in Maryland?
well, I couldn't hear you.
Are there any plans to safeguard the laws that currently exist in Maryland regarding Roe v. Wade and abortion rights?
Well, first, I think it's been said best. The Supreme Court decision is unprecedented. Taking away a constitutional right that's been there for 49 years, giving the woman a right over her own medical decisions. It's unprecedented. We look to the Supreme Court to expand rights against the powerful. In this case, they turned over a woman's right to make a decision to state legislators. But the decision itself puts the control in the state legislatures. So in Maryland, we have a legislature that is very sensitive to a woman's right to make her own health care choices. So we are confident that in our state, for Marylanders, we will be protected. There is a challenge for people coming into our state, which will be welcomed. But there is going to be concerns about laws in other states that may try to make that more difficult. At the national level, we're going to do everything we possibly can to protect a woman's right of choice. But it's going to be a challenge, as we know. We know what the makeup of the Congress is. We know that in the United States Senate, we have 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans. It's difficult for us to be able to move legislation. But we'll do everything we can to protect a woman's right of choice, but it's going to be challenging under the Supreme Court decision. I'm confident in Maryland that women's rights will be protected by our state legislature and the way that they have acted.
Yeah, I would just add that in Maryland, like the senator, I'm not worried. I think that we have great rights, and we've already talked about here locally with me committing $300,000 to organizations to support women and their right to choose, and we're going to continue to do whatever we can do to do that. I have no doubt in my mind that our General Assembly, our leaders here in Maryland will protect women's rights to choose. We're going to be welcoming, as the senator said, to people coming from other states, but that opens us up to other levels of problems as well.
Have you talked to Leader Schumer about forcing a vote on the floor to get people on the record to codify Roe? The president made a campaign promise to do everything good to go now?
We've had discussions as to what steps we can take. I know that Leader Schumer is considering every step that we possibly can do in order to advance women's ability to make their own health care choices. So yes, we're looking at, there's a lot of different, we're also working with the Biden administration. There are things that the administration can do administratively. So there is going to be efforts made to do the best we can, but make no mistake about it, this decision by the Supreme Court will have tragic consequences. It reverses Roe v. Wade. It reverses the constitutional protection that women have. So it limits our ability to protect a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. But we'll do everything we can to try to mitigate that. As far as having votes on the floor of the Senate, I'm sure we'll have some votes on the floor of the Senate.
And I think just to add to that, I think especially for us men, we need to really think about what that looks like, right? And when you think about in some of these states where potentially women will be forced to have babies that are born out of rape, think about how ridiculous that is that in 2022 we're still having that kind of this discussion where a bunch of men are making decisions about women's bodies. Yes, ma'am. Mackenzie wants to come last, so I'll come back to you. Oh, yeah.
Supreme Court also rolled back gun control laws.
Yep.
Just this weekend, there was a triple shooting. Obviously, last night you were on the scene where a police officer was present in the parking lot where it happened. I mean, with obviously, it seems like people aren't, police instability is not deterring crime. The courts are rolling back gun control laws. What else can be done?
Well, I think a whole bunch of things, right? And I'm going to invite the commissioner and Director Jackson in too. But I think what we have to do, and I've said this maybe not to you before, but to many members of the media, we have to level set our reality around what's going on. Number one, right? When you look at us in our country in comparison to like countries like ours, the prevalence of guns, the easy access to guns that folks have who shouldn't have them, lead up to these incidents. Basic minor conflict that ends up with somebody shot or dead because they have access to a gun that they shouldn't have in the first place, right? So we know that our fabulous senator has been one of the folks championing at the federal level to make sure that we're doing everything at every level of government to deal with that, to deal with the fact of illegal guns, right? It shouldn't be easy for people to be able to go out, buy a gun online, print it, do whatever, and make it, right? It should be consequences for those who are trafficking weapons into our city and selling them knowingly to the people that are going to use them in the commitments of crime in a city where more than half of the guns that we recover come from other states. We also know that there needs to be swift and certain consequences for people when we catch them, because I know I'm tired of it. I know the police commissioner is tired of it, that we arrest somebody for some crime and then, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, in a short period of time, we're rearresting that person for another violent act. All of those things together. But also we have to understand, especially as someone who grew up in Baltimore in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, that we also have to start to build better neighborhoods and people. These things don't exist in a vacuum. They have to be done together at the same time. More than one thing can be true, because when you see people now dying over Instagram beefs, dying over things because their girlfriend left them or their boyfriend left them, dying over some small minor dispute, that is something significantly different than we saw in the 90s and the 2000s, where so much of it was connected to what we would call gangs and drugs. Madam Director, you want to add? PC, you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the mayor said it very eloquently. It's more than just good policing, and we're always working to improve that, but it's about improving the conditions of people so that they make better decisions to not commit violent crime, especially when you see them doing it right there. That's not a deployment issue or a fault in the deployment. It's actually the decisions of people who have no regard for their own life or any of the lives of anyone else or any regard for any authority figure.
Commissioner, would you give us an update on the triple shooting in the Frankfurt Shopping Center? And do police know the relationship of the individuals involved?
Well, I'll start with, it is still under investigation. We don't know the relationship of all the parties involved. What we do know is that 2 of those victims have expired from their injuries. One person has non-life-threatening injuries. There were multiple shooters who were shooting both inside and outside of the convenience store. A very brazen attack with officers, I would say, about 150 feet away. And this speaks to, once again, an accurate deployment strategy, but now we have to figure out how to change the decisions of the offender so that they won't offend. And it's about swift and certain consequences, which are not just for police alone. It's for everything that happens after the arrest.
When you talk about swift and certain consequences, both of you said it, we've heard you say it before. Are you saying that the consequences in place right now aren't either being implemented or aren't strong enough?
What we can say is that we are arresting the same offenders over and over again, and some of the offenders we arrest are turning into shooting and homicide victims. And so they are not being deterred simply by police presence. Deterrence actually means we have to deter them with our presence, making sure we're both engaging and enforcing, that cases are being prosecuted, that they are being convicted, and they are being transformed and rehabilitated through an incarceration process. All of it together, along with prevention on the front end, intervention on the front end, their rehabilitation and reentry programs, all of those on the front end in addition to enforcement and engagement.
Can I say one thing on this? Because Mayor Scott's been very engaged nationally on this community violence intervention funds, which is exactly what the commissioner's talking about. And this didn't make the headlines, but the bipartisan gun bill that we did pass last Thursday was overshadowed by the Supreme Court decisions that occurred on Thursday and Friday. But it was the first time we were able to pass some sensible gun safety legislation that'll make a difference. But included in that was appropriations to deal with mental health issues and community issues. And one of the community issues is the Community Intervention Fund that the mayor has been very instrumental in. Baltimore's in line to get some help under that will provide resources to Baltimore to have alternatives in communities that will keep people safer and safer activities.
Director.
I was just going to say, okay, go ahead, that's fine.
Mackenzie got the last question.
It's just a quick follow-up.
You're good.
So to the points that have already been made, we obviously have much work ahead of us, much work that we're doing now. The police commissioner, as the head of the mayor's public or law enforcement agency, and myself as the head of the mayor's public safety agency, do work hand in hand with regard to making sure that folks have access to the resources that they need from a community perspective, and also making sure that those folks who have decided that they're going to continue in a life of crime do face the consequences that they need to. The partnership that he mentioned before around our correctional system is one that has been built much more strongly than it ever has been before. In fact, Monty's staff just visited all of Baltimore's facilities last week to make sure that we had a deep understanding of what rehabilitative services look like for folks who were dealing with incarceration, so that when they come back, we're not dealing with folks who then continue into a cycle of violence, either becoming a reoffender or a victim.
If people aren't afraid of the consequences that are in place right now, and they're not perhaps receiving the level of consequences that are on the books, what needs to change?
Well, I think, Mackenzie, I'll say it to you in a simple way, and congratulations, by the way. I'll say it to you this way. People aren't afraid of them because they're not certain. That's the reality, and I know the data is there. It's about the certainty of consequences. What needs to change is what, if you've heard me talk about time and time again, that there needs to be that certainty, and that certainty means that, hey, I did this time, I know I'm going to prison. What that is going to require a level of coordination that we are pushing for here through the restarting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, but also it's going to require some deep level system changes for things that do not report to the mayor, right? When you think about that, what if I were in your shoes, what I would be looking at is like the data around how many people on probation or parole end up being the victims, and how many of these folks were arrested for a violent crime and then end up being the victim. What happened? What does rehabilitation look like when people are behind the wall? Why is it that someone was released that quickly, right? And look at every single part of this system, because this is something that is not just happening overnight. This has been whoever has been in your position has been asking the person in my position for as long as I've been breathing. But what has never happened is, how do we start to think about, in a city where so many of these agencies are state or otherwise, that we talk about the system totally and address it? And then also, as you heard from our senator, let's also face the reality of what needs to happen on the community level, because people are making these decisions in a very emotional way, and we have to impact it that way as well. Thank you.
A city healthcare question to wrap it up. I want to be respectful of my time,
Last one.
but monkeypox are starting to come into the United States. Can you verify how many cases are in the city and what you're doing to combat?
Well, as of right now, Dr. D and I will be meeting again this week. As of right now, she hasn't alerted me to any, but she's just like she is with COVID. You know that Dr. Jaraza is going to be on top of it, making sure we've been sharing our information, and we're going to continue to do that, making sure that we're prepared to do whatever we have to do to prevent the further spread. Thank you.
You can't confirm the number.
No, there is, as of right now, she has not alerted me to any confirmed cases here in Baltimore City.
Thank you.
Thank you.